Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
And welcome to Q&A 74, a
Woohoo.
number about which I can think of nothing interesting.
Yeah, it's a boring
Someday
number.
I expect to get an email from somebody who's like, this is why this number is cool. And I'm just telling you, if you're thinking that right now, I welcome that email.
Yeah,
I'll
bring
be
it
very
on if you
excited
got
to see it.
something.
Exactly. I'm excited. I want to know. But for now, I suppose we shall just on with it and get to the first question.
Yeah.
Michelle, I think you start us off today.
I do, and this is a very short question.
It's very short.
So this one says, doesn't it make sense to do therapy on why we are angry before we learn coping skills?
Yeah, I thought this was great because I was like, also, this could be taken so many different ways. The more times I read it, the more I'm like, I hope one of us answered the right question.
We'll see.
We'll see. I will own that I'm using a fair bit of projection to render my interpretation. And I at least find that I can understand what would be at least one temptation there. I personally can get really lost in trying to chase the why of my emotions. Or feel like if I addressed the why, then I wouldn't need the coping skills. Because if I addressed the why, then the thing wouldn't be there in the first place, right? It's a very tempting me to be. Why practice the coping skill, which is an obnoxious thing that is foreign and unfamiliar and I don't wanna? Couldn't we just cure me of having had my mother? I don't know.
Get to the root of the problem.
Get to the root of the problem. Exactly. So I don't know if that's exactly where this listener's coming from, but that's what I heard or felt in it. And I definitely understand that as a temptation. However, it's not always given to us to know the why, right? That's just not always a piece of information that we have access to. And often enough, when we think we do have access to or know the why, we don't, actually. We're telling stories to ourselves, and we're telling one that we like or that makes sense, but maybe inaccurate. And so really to remind ourselves that, God, isn't it the skill training assumptions, right? Is it the last one, Michelle?
Which
one of them is all things are caused.
Yeah, that is one of the
thoughts,
skills
feelings,
training
emotions
assumptions.
are caused.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, right, I think about that, but we may not always know the reason, right?
Mhm.
Or may not know that cause, I think is how it's phrased, something like that. Anyway, sorry, my brain just got lost in now, thinking I'm going to be able to read off the skills training assumptions some days. Somebody can, I don't even know what they're called. The opening bits for AA, right? Aren't they
Oh,
givens?
yeah.
Right.
I know quite a few of them, but probably out of order, and there's definitely some I would leave off.
Right. Anyway, yeah, I didn't actually get it yet, but the Adderall is well worn off by now, and my brain got snagged into that thought. I apologize, listener. Let me get back to your thing. So what I was saying is that we can't always know what the why is, and when we think we do, sometimes we still don't. What coping skills allow us to do is cope with our emotions, period. Whether we can correctly identify what the emotions are or where they're coming from or not. It is simply the case that whatever caused your emotional situation, coping skills are there to help. The other thing I think about when I hear this, I didn't even put this in my notes, I'm just flying blind right now, but does it make sense to do therapy on why we're angry before we learn coping skills? That reads like some sort of baseline anger, right? Just angry all the time or prone to anger maybe, which I totally get. I say that way too often, which I understand. And also I think ignores how coping skills can also be useful for emotions that aren't baseline, or, we can do all of the work we want. Maybe someone does come in someday and cure me of my mother. But someone cuts me off in traffic, I'm still going to get angry. right? And so having coping skills am I taking what you're saying accidentally?
No, it's
okay,
not
good.
what I said in my notes, but I was starting to think this same thing of like, we're going to feel angry all the time because it's one of the 5 core emotions. So
yeah, it's just going to come up, whether it's based for the rest in of something like bump, 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 why we're feeling it. Not going to do a lot of, we can't pre-therapize all the different things we may encounter over the course of our existence that could make us angry. Right. So at some point, we need to have the skills for handling when our bodies go down that particular neurochemical route, which they will sometimes for reasons. So that was my thinking.
Yeah, I love that you were saying that because, yes, it was what I was starting to think. And we say this often, but this is happening to me now, which is, yes, I have notes. I will get to my notes, but I'm having other things come to me that are also not in my notes. And one of the things that was starting to come to me that I talk about, very regularly on the podcast is that, sequence of something happens, we think something, we feel something, we do something. And I think ultimately what this listener is asking is like, well, I need to understand the something happens, right? Like something happened. Then I had thoughts, I had emotions, I had behaviors. But yeah, really when we're talking about coping skills, you work it backwards in a way. Like start with the do something.
Or don't.
Right? Yeah. And then, you have the feeling, you have the thought, something happens. You might be able to, I guess we could say like trace it back. But yes, you don't have to know what is the something that happened to address the anger, because really I tell people this often. It's less about the what happened and is more about the next 3 things. What did you think? What did you feel? What did you do? So I guess to very straightforwardly answer this listener's question, no, you don't have to do therapy on why you're angry before you learn coping skills. And I think that's ultimately what you were saying as well, Kate. That having been said, the thing that I initially thought when I read this the first time was dialectically, I do think that both are helpful. I don't think you want to exclusively focus on one and not ever look at the other. I think that could become problematic. There are people who have done a fine-tooth comb over their history and they do understand, like you were saying, Kate, like dun, 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 like they have gotten to a point where they have an understanding of where the big thing for why they have this anger that comes out of them. They've done that, but they haven't learned a single thing of what to do with it. Or you'll get other people who learn their coping skills up and down and sideways, but they haven't ever really tried to look into what gets the anger going in the first place for them. So doing both would be ideal. Another thing that I thought about reading this is like the reason why coping skills are so important is because when you especially want to do a deeper dive,
I love this part of your answer. Yes.
Yeah, like say into, hey, therapist that I'm seeing, I really want to look at like, why do I get so angry? What is it that brings this out of me? And you start to dig into that. You need to be ready to dig into that. Like when I'm doing trauma work with people, sometimes clients come in and they're like, I'm here to tell you about my trauma. And I basically, as nicely as I can say, we're not doing that yet. Because I need to make sure that when you actually open up and start talking about this, like we're about to open Pandora's box here. Before we do that, I need to make sure that you and I both know what it looks like for you to then contain that. Because you're going to have to leave this space and go out into the world and lead your life, right? Like go to work and take care of your kids or like whatever it is. And if we just open up this trauma and you don't have any coping skills for how to then take care of yourself, it's going to be awful for you. So first, we're going to prepare and we're going to talk about what you're going to do before session, in session, and after session when things are activating for you. So I think with this topic being anger, the same thing could still apply, because I've had this happen with quite a few clients where they do start understanding like the sources of their anger. I'm not trying to generalize too hard here, but a lot of times it rests in a parent relationship from childhood, things that a parent modeled for them or things that a parent said or did to them. And then they understandably get more angry at that parent about the injustice of it all. Totally get why that happens. And also, we are now basically fanning the flames of your anger by looking at it closer. And how do we make sure that doesn't become a raging wildfire in your life? And the way we do that is because you need coping skills. So, yeah, coping skills are important. And they should be done either, I would say, before you do the deeper therapy work to make sense of why you're angry, or at the very least, right alongside it.
Concomitant.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
Awesome. All right. On to question 2. This one reads, does DBT work for everyone? We've been at this for a year with my daughter. Did one residential program, then comprehensive DBT, then hospitalizations, and now a different residential program. We are not seeing a lot of improvement. She's been at her new residential program for 3 weeks and still bawls constantly, saying it's not what we think and it's horrible and the staff is awful to her. At her first residential program, she was only like this for the first few days. This new residential program is supposed to be the best. She says she's trying. She's 14 years old, diagnosed with bipolar, ADHD, and likely BPD. I'm so tired. Nothing works. I thought DBT would be the magic pill. Have others put this much time and effort and seen results after this long? Help.
Yeah. I love that this was posted in the Facebook group to maybe hear from other parents of teens who are struggling. So that's really great that the listener did this. I'm going to start off with another dialectic here, which is this listener is doing everything they can. And also the daughter has to want to change. And if that piece of her wanting to change is missing, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but you're not probably going to get the outcome that you want, listener, unfortunately, right? When they said, and I thought this was so, yes, we're talking about this in the context of this listener having a teen daughter and trying to help, the daughter. But when the listener said, I thought DBT would be the magic pill, I was like, I think so many people have thought that.
Yeah.
Coming from all different walks of life, all different contexts and situations, they come upon DBT and they're like, this is going to be the thing that helps me get better. And while we hear many stories of people saying that, some people really have raised their hands and said, oh my gosh, DBT was the magic pill for me. I tried this and that and all these other things, but it wasn't until I found DBT that I actually started to get better. Yes, for some people that is their experience, but DBT is not a magic pill. And the reason why I say that is because you can learn DBT, but it only works if you actually use it. Truly.
Yeah, knowing it is only half the battle at most.
Yes.
Honestly, I think it might be a quarter of the battle with most of the things DBT is helping with.
Yeah, exactly. And so my guess would be that this 14-year-old has now gone through DBT in a variety of contexts. I'm guessing the residential programs are teaching it, maybe being talked about during hospitalizations and all that stuff. So,
certainly, yeah.
Has she learned maybe some DBT terms? Maybe she even has some understanding of what the skill is. If I were to be tell me about Dear Man. When would you use it? What is it for? Maybe she could tell me, right? Maybe she knows the difference between, I'm going to just throw out acronyms, Dear Man, accepts, and tip. Maybe she knows the difference between those things. Great. That doesn't count for anything if she is not actually going to practice and think that these things could benefit her. So that is not easy to hear probably, but I really do believe that is the truth. She's getting exposed to a lot of DBT, but I doubt she's really like actually doing it. But what also came up for me reading this, listener, I know this is not your question, so I'm going a little outside the box here, but I was thinking about you. Like, I wasn't just thinking about her and how we can get her to see the light of DBT, but like, you are dealing with a shit ton as a parent. And so I was thinking too, like, are there things that you're doing to get help and support for yourself? Whatever that looks like. Sometimes residential programs have parent like support programs. It could look like getting into seeing an individual therapist. It could look like you deciding to take a deep dive into DBT, but not with the intention of doing it for her, but like doing it for yourself. Because boy, is there a good amount of radical acceptance needed here, like major expert level radical acceptance. That would be super hard. But I can hear in what you wrote that like all of this has really taken it out of you going through this when she's only 14. Oh, like you've been at this for years, it sounds like already. So that's one huge thing I want to say and recommend is that whatever it looks like, whether it's, reading books addressed towards parents who have challenging teens, or again, finding support groups or whatever it looks like, that you really make sure you are getting support for yourself. That's going to be super important moving forward.
It's funny, Michelle, as I was reading my notes while you were talking, I was like, I felt like I was saying something as well, like along with Michelle, like adding on to it, and then looking at it again as you were talking about, I think I just said exactly the same thing. Just in different words. We'll see if I can find something novel in there. I do want to sort of start actually though where you ended off, Michelle, which is just acknowledging just how hard that sounds. Right, both just all the desire for your kiddo to be well, and all the time spent investing in the magic pill that's not, I don't know, it's not growing any beanstalks, nothing is amazing or magic coming from this, right? So just a lot of compassion and hope that you are bringing compassion to yourself as well. As Michelle did point out above, right, exposure to DBT and using DBT are two very different things. And only one of them is terribly helpful. Have others put this much time and effort and seen results after this long? So that stuck out to me. And what I was thinking is that I don't think there's any such thing as an amount of time after which no movement can or will be made, right? That it's not about, well, if you've done it for 6 months and nothing has happened, then nothing will ever happen. Like Michelle was mostly speaking to, at any point that your daughter decides to engage more with stuff, that's the time when things would or will start happening, right? In a lot of ways, I would say the clock on DBT working hasn't started for your daughter, depending, right? Maybe you were wrong, but at least I didn't see in this something like she's doing her skills religiously and it's still not working, right? Which feels like it would be a little bit of a different conversation potentially. So also with your question about does DBT work for everyone? Well, I guess we are sort of nearly contractually obligated, I think, Michelle, due to the title of our book to say yes.
I know, I thought that was interesting. We're so behind on Q&A content. Who knows when this was posted? This could have very well been posted before we even published the book. But yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. Like, does DBT really work for everyone? I was like, well, I mean, we say all the time we think it does.
Right, exactly. I'm like, ooh. But to be, I know, a little bit more explicit of exactly what I at least mean by that is that I do in fact believe there is something in DBT for abso-fucking-lutely everybody.
Everyone can benefit from it.
Yes.
If they use it.
I've never met the single human being who got, aces, 100% scores all the way down on the 4 things that are taught in DBT. So yeah, we could all use that. That being said, there are people who benefit vastly, and there are also some who are much better suited to other modalities, right? I know we only did the one little episode on it, Michelle. I still have an intention to learn, like do a whole course on it eventually, but like RODBT, right? Like, while it is DBT, it is meant for a pretty different crowd of people at its like best case than DBT is meant for. So yeah, I want to say DBT is useful for everyone, and it also may not be the most useful thing for any given person. That's going to be individual and dependent on them. So yeah. So yeah, it slipped out. Been trying so hard.
We got pretty far into the episode without it. Before I read this next one, I will give a quick little explanation, because this listener references in what I will read that they appreciated Kate sharing her friendship story. And you might be listening to this now being like, what friendship story are we talking about? And Kate, please tell me if you think I'm incorrect on this, but I'm pretty sure what this listener is going to be referencing is the friendship story you shared, I mean, quite a while ago now, but when you had a friend basically just completely
ghost
you.
Yeah. Yep, I assume.
Yep. So even if you're listening to this, you're like, I don't know what that friendship story is. That's probably all you need to know, is that Kate at one point shared on the podcast having a really close friend who just all of a sudden completely cut ties talking with her, which is pretty unfortunate. Okay. On to what the listener wrote. So they said, hello, I've been having a rough couple of weeks and has really tested my DBT skills. First, I want to thank Kate for sharing her friendship story. My situation is a bit different, but it helped me feel less alone. What I'm struggling with is obsessing over the past and unresolved situations. I recently found out that some people involved, 3 of them, have all passed away since then, so I have no option for closure. I also want to know how a certain person died, but have been unable to find the answer. This has caused a lot of issues with work and my current relationships because I can't talk to my family or friends about this due to the trauma and horrible situation that resulted. And then they mentioned substance abuse, codependence, and emotional abuse. I tried telling myself that I shouldn't be upset because this person was an extremely toxic person. But that doesn't change my continued love for them. Knowing that he's no longer living is just really difficult to swallow. And the shame about those feelings is slowly tearing down all the progress I have made. I know this is a long post, so I apologize in advance. Thanks, guys. Which, by the way, we love the long posts. No need to censor yourself. Cut these short, listeners. Yeah, it wasn't that long in my opinion. We've seen that.
No. And I want to start off by saying I'm glad that sharing my friendship story was helpful for this listener. Right, we send these things out into the ethos and rarely get to know what impact they do or don't have. So I'm glad that had that impact for that person. So let's see. What were some of my other thoughts? I feel like my brain was like, well, we're either going to overshare or not overshare, but like, I don't know. I could talk too much or too little about this one. I'm not sure which way I'm going to end up going. Because we're not trying to sit here and entirely therapize somebody through one paragraph of their life.
Right.
I was talking about the fact that love is not the choice that we like to believe it is. I was actually just talking with Michelle about this in a personal conversation recently. How love is so intensely neurochemically driven and pheromonally driven and stuff that isn't the part of you that thinks driven. And that does a lot to explain lasting emotional attachment, even to folks that we might know are toxic, are bad to us, have been abusive, have harmed us greatly. It's also my personal opinion that even the worst among us are deserving of basic human care and tenderness. That being said, I don't think you have to share that opinion with me to give yourself some compassion for the fact that you're still holding this care or tenderness or love for this human being who's died. Michelle, you've been doing so well about leading with dialectics. Dialogues? I can't talk today. Dialectics for a lot of the answers today. So I will lean into there as well. Right? Just because this person was harmful, was abusive, was any of the other traumatizing things that you mentioned, it's still totally plausible to also love them, right? And you can see them as a human being, as someone who went through as, the sort of shit that they were also dishing out, right? Who could understand their humanity. For lack of a better way of putting it, you can have loving kindness, right? Kind of connection at least. And if your body was pretty connected to that human body, there's no shame in the fact that you still feel that you have curiosity and that you have grief around his loss. And perhaps loss of the other two. I wasn't sure about that from what the listener wrote. So I do hope, listener, that you are able to give yourself some compassion around having these feelings of loss, of curiosity, of sadness, etc. I'm incredibly sorry to hear you can't talk to most of your people about this, though, as you were mentioning earlier, Michelle, sometimes we listen to the other one of us read it and go, now that reads differently when I hear someone else go through saying it. And when I was listening this time through and the listener was mentioning they can't talk to their family or friends about this due to the trauma and horrible situation that resulted, I recognized on my first read through, I was believing that, or my brain was projecting the idea that their family had said, like, please don't talk to us about this. Like, this is so jarring or hard or triggering or things like that. We just don't want to hear about it. Reading it again, I wonder, again, I don't know either way. Obviously, it's ambiguous enough for me to have interpreted it two different directions quickly together. But I wonder if this person might also be maybe setting some people's boundaries for them. Right? That is a risk that all of us have, is this idea of, oh, I'm sure this would upset this person, so I shouldn't talk to them about it. Right? I don't want to bring up all those painful memories, so I'll keep this to myself. I don't want people to be reminded of that incredibly hard time, so maybe I should just keep quiet. It's not an uncommon way of thinking, and if those folks haven't told you they don't want to talk about it, if they haven't told you that they don't have the emotional bandwidth to handle it, right? If there haven't been boundaries set, I would highly encourage you to check in and see if the assumptions that you're making are accurate. It could be that someone would be honored to be the person that you felt comfortable being vulnerable enough to share with about this thing where clearly you're having some pretty complicated emotions. So that was something I did want to bring that wasn't in my notes because I didn't really catch it as a possibility my first time around. But I do hope that whether it's through being able to connect to the folks that you think you can't or some other form of community or connection, I hope you are able to find somewhere where you can share this and feel supported, which I know Michelle will echo later. And then I will keep it short because I could go way too long talking about shame. But in brief, I would say that secrecy, that idea of not telling people, playing things close to your chest, whatever, really nourishes the worst parts or pieces of shame. So instead of allowing us to examine or either discard or grow from the shame, when we choose to stay entirely hidden or silent, that shame can grow and grow without any examination or introspection. So I wanted to also put out there that I suspect if the listener could openly allow themselves some amount of wondering, some amount of that grieving, the things that they were saying they felt ashamed about, that they might not be so consumed by thinking about it all, and that it might not impact, their work as much. Because if we try and shut ourselves up because of shame, both the shame and the things we're trying to shut up tend to get louder. So I was really hoping mostly to normalize for this person the idea of still feeling attachment, even in complicated situations. I don't know, not that you know nothing about that, Michelle. And Michelle does do some good skill listing below, but I did want to just do a quick shout out to checking the facts and self-soothing, both of which I think could be utilized for this person's, or not for, but as a part of helping this person. So
yeah, nice. I'll pick up where you were at of saying, it's ambiguous, right? We don't know what the reason is for why the listener is not sharing or talking about this with other people in their lives, or in their life. I was actually thinking of a different reason, right? So you're saying, there you go. Well, maybe it's because other people have said, I don't want to hear about it, or maybe it's because the listener is assuming that they don't want to hear about it when maybe they actually would. I was thinking that what could be behind that is that, and I mean, you were speaking a lot about shame, right? don't want to share this with other people because I fear that they will judge me. At least for myself, that's a big reason why I hold back sharing things with people sometimes. Nobody's told me not to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of a thing. They might even be happy to listen to me talk about it. And I know that, but I am like, ugh, I don't want their honest opinion because they might not fully understand what I'm feeling or be able to really empathize with me. That kind of an idea. So who knows? Lots of things to consider with that piece of things. But I mean, ultimately what this listener is speaking to is something that I hear a lot with my clients, because I think this general theme is what brings a lot of people to therapy, which is that it's like you're going along your life. And if you think about your life being written like a story, like a book is being written, and it's documenting the events of your life as you're going along. And then at a certain point, the story that starts getting written is one in which you're like, wait a second, I don't like the direction this is going. Or the story just stops. At a certain point, it's like it stops. And you're like, wait a second, that's not how this is supposed to end. What's happening here? And this listener had that experience, right? This death of someone they care about that they're talking about sounds like it was really unexpected. And so this is like the story stops when somebody dies. And our brains so want to have things, you know, end happy. That's how we want stories to go, right? Happily ever after. We want things to turn out okay. And so when it just comes to a halt because of something tragic that we didn't see coming, our brain is like, wait a second, we need to finish this. Like there should be 15 chapters to this book. It doesn't just stop at chapter 10. So like, what happens now? But we don't always get those answers, at least not right away, to what's going to happen next. So that's what it sounds to me like this listener is grappling with, if I had to conceptualize it in that way. But what do we do with that? What do we do when we're like, nope, this story has been written in a way that I hate, or like this story feels incomplete. And I don't know, right? Like when they were speaking to like how they died, right? I really want to know how they died. Yes, your brain is trying to make sense of what has happened, because that's a big piece that's missing from the story. So it's radical acceptance all the way, skills-wise for me. Radical acceptance is huge when it comes to accepting that there will be things that you may not ever know. Like, for example, you mentioned inspiration from Kate's friendship loss story. I think we were actually talking about that in the context of a radical acceptance episode, if I remember right. Because
Yep, that's right. I was trying to remember what context I shared it about.
I know, it just came back to me. Because Kate had to radically accept after multiple efforts to reach out to this friend.
Yep.
She's not interested in talking to me anymore. I'm not going to hear from her probably ever again. And so you, listener, may need to accept, I may not get an answer to how he died. I may not ever find out. These other people involved, you know, you say, I'm looking back at what they wrote. Yeah. People involved, a few people have passed away. Yeah. I mean,
unresolved is likely to stay unresolved in this case, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this is a time to accept that you may not get the answers that you seek. And to be really compassionate to yourself when your brain tries to find those answers anyways, because it wants to. Because you're not talking about it with other people in your life for any of the reasons that Kate and I speculated about, or it could be other reasons that we didn't touch on.
Didn't even guess. Yeah.
Yeah, but didn't even guess. But regardless of what the reasons are, you need some kind of outlet. Posting about it, like here in our group, great, right? Sometimes the best outlet is strangers. Like, this is why crisis lines exist. So that if people are like, well, I don't want to go to a close, friend or family member and tell them how much I'm struggling with my mental health, I can call this number and still talk about it with somebody. So whether it is a therapist or, somebody in your life who didn't know any of these people who passed away, and is really removed from the situation, whatever it is, yeah, I'm just going to be honest, you do need to be talking about it somewhere. Because when we talk about it, and we hear ourselves talking about things, we process it differently. And, even just to name that, like, yeah, even if the situation was toxic for all these reasons, I still had love in this. Just naming that out loud is really important because, as Kate acknowledged, right, dialectically, like, nothing wrong with that. That happens a lot where we can recognize someone is toxic and we still have love for them. So just being really kind to yourself there. But also the last thing I'll end on is, generally speaking, again, as far as skills go, yes, radical acceptance is from distress tolerance. Kate named self-soothing. That is from distress tolerance. To be honest, listener, anything from distress tolerance. So add in some accepts or add in some improve, add in whatever, works for you, whatever skills you like and feel comfortable and enjoyable to do. Because we say this, I remember saying this for a long time when we would talk about the distress tolerance module and be introducing it to our groups. And what we would often say is that distress tolerance is for the things in life that are outside of your control. And I would often name grief and, especially when you've lost somebody to death as a big reason to use distress tolerance. Because you are now trying to tolerate the distress you are experiencing as you are grieving. And you can't do anything to bring that person back. So yes, dive into the distress tolerance module and play around there. And especially work on radical acceptance. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. All right, on to the next one. And we start with a short one and we're ending with a short one today. This one reads, I got fired from my job yesterday. I adored my job and now just feel so lost and alone. I don't know what to do next. My morale is gone along with my drive. I'm devastated. How do I get out of this and move on to bigger and better things?
Yeah. I think there's all kinds of losses that we don't really talk about or acknowledge. I mean, the last listener was talking about a loss in the form of death, which is the most common way above and beyond that we think about loss. But losing something like a job, that is a huge part of our day-to-day life. That is, for many people, a huge part of their identity. So I just
community
wanted to
for people,
there.
like lots of things.
Yes, absolutely. With coworkers and things like that, it's major. So I'm glad that this listener is talking about the grief that is coming from them losing their job. One thing that really stood out to me reading this is when the listener said, I got fired from my job yesterday. So my take on this could be different if the listener said, I got fired from my job, 3 months ago, and I'm still really struggling and I don't know what to do next. But because this just happened yesterday and they say like, how do I get out of this and move on to bigger and better things? You're not going to get there yet. And to just really acknowledge that for yourself. Because again, if we look at this like grief, many people in those initial days and sometimes weeks after a big loss, at least my experiences with grief that I have had, I feel like I am moving through mud for a little while. Like I still remember, I can't remember if it was after my cat died or after I had my miscarriage. I cannot remember. but I remember I was trying to like unload the dishwasher or something.
Dishwasher was after the miscarriage.
That was after the miscarriage? Okay. It literally, like, I started, and I remember kind of vaguely what time it was, and then I looked at the clock later when I was done, and like 2 hours had passed. And I don't remember what was happening. Like, I must have gotten distracted or something. I don't know. But like, I literally could not focus on unloading the dishwasher. I remember like making the bed one day, and I literally remember watching my arms like making the bed, and I was like, I'm moving slow. Like, it literally was like I was going in slow motion. For many, I mean, again, grief impacts everybody differently, but I know my experience is not an uncommon one that I'm describing. So when you are in the initial aftermath, you need to set the bar for yourself really, really low. So I wouldn't have that be your focus right now. That being said, if I am going to answer your question, that's my first piece, is like, don't try this yet. But after some time has passed and you feel like you're kind of coming out of that fog, what I would recommend you do at that time is think about the long-term A from ABC. Right? So the long-term A is all about, what are your values? And how do you take what you value and turn it into tangible action steps that you can start doing right away? And I don't know, of course, what your job was, or if it was like a dream job that you know, this is what I wanted to be when I was 6 years old. I always wanted to do this job, and then I was doing it, and then I lost it. I don't know if it was that, or if it was like something that you kind of stumbled into but found that you really liked. But it does sound like no matter what, your job for you was a source of joy. It was a source of meaning. That's the sense I get. So in considering what to do next, sure, you can look for jobs in the same field if you want to. But if you really want a change or that kind of a thing, no matter what, you want to be looking at your values. And making sure that whatever you do next is hopefully going to be something, even if it's wildly different on paper than what your last job was, might be just about the same or very different. But either way, make sure that it's something that aligns with your values. And so the long-term A is a good driving force with that. So I would recommend that. But yeah, in general, you're just going to need to go easy on yourself for a little bit. That's the main thing I would focus on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, Michelle, a whole bunch of this is not quite echoing you, but a lot of like, yeah, I agree with. Anyway, it's funny. You'll see how many.
Okay.
It just became funny to me as I was writing the notes to keep doing it. But first, listener, I don't know. I could be wrong, but when I hear you talk about getting fired, it reminds me of how I felt after I got fired from my first internship. I was crushed. I was a pile of sadness and self-doubt and grief for, I mean, when I say a pile, I do mean that pretty literally. Like, think lump. Right on the couch kind of thing. So I was going to say for a solid 3 days, and intermittently for a while after that. Right. So it wasn't 3 days of total lumpitude and then done with it. It was 3 days of solid lump, and then I could like unlump sometimes. It was incredibly hard hitting. And so, yeah, I want to echo that it's not time yet, I don't think. My God, the day after, right? Let yourself have it. Let yourself have the feelings. Don't run away from them that hard yet. I know grief is not the most pleasant of teachers, but it's a good, it exists for a reason, right? So trying to give it the space and the respect that it deserves. As for how to get out when it is time, I'd suggest approaching your choices from a wise mind frame could be really helpful. Maybe doing pros and cons for different options, and along with the big A, Michelle, you said so. That was a really good one. I was like, that's pretty perfect. I would, however, still suggest also the little A from ABC. It can be a really low effort way to fill your cup back up again when something like this comes and just dumps your cup wholesale upside down. Sometimes it can be harder to reach for the big things first. So if reaching for long-term goals and achievements feels like a little bit of a difficult way to come out of the initial grief, you might try something smaller and a little bit more manageable.
Yeah, awesome. That's a good variety of skills. All right, so that completes this Q&A. And if you have questions for us, the 2 ways that you can get those to us are, number 1, you can email us, dbtmepodcast@gmail.com, or number 2, you can make sure to join our Facebook group and you can post your question there. So we will see you guys when we get to the next Q&A. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
To learn more about us and the DBT skills we're teaching each week, join our Facebook group. Simply log in to your Facebook profile and search for DBT and Me Podcast.